Hey y'all, Organizing Higher, welcome or welcome back, sharing with you how I am getting things done. In this video, I want to talk about kind of the process of working with a project and the process that I go through from start to finish when I'm dealing with a project. So if you're using GTD or you're newer to GTD or you just want an example of what it looks like in real life for someone to work through a project, then definitely keep watching. So almost always when I'm working on a project, the very first step is that the project, in some way, there's some type of trigger, task, or something that lands in my inbox. Sometimes I'll maybe get an email from my boss that basically says like, hey, can you work on this project? And that's the thing that lands in my inbox. And when I'm processing my inbox, clarifying, organizing, all that stuff, that's when I recognize, the scope of the project is going to take more than one step. So once I've noticed that something, or once I become aware of the fact that something is going to be a project, I treat it as such and I put it as a project in Todoist. So I literally just create the project in Todoist, which is really easy to do. And that's always my very first step. Sometimes if I'm processing something from my Todoist inbox, I'll have that same realization. So it's maybe was a meeting note that I took, and when I'm putting those notes into my inbox in Todoist, when I'm going to the inbox processing process and clarifying what things are, I'll realize, oh, this particular task is actually related to a project. And so from my inbox in Todoist, I'll use the keyboard shortcuts. If you use the keyboard shortcut hashtag, that will help you to create a project, and you can just create a project name right away. Once I've created a project in Todoist, my next step is to pretty much make sure that there's at least a next action in that particular project. Now, usually because I've either gotten an email or it's something that landed in my Todoist inbox and I went through the capture, clarify, organize stage, I have a next action because it's inherent from that processing process. But there are some instances where I actually haven't identified what the next action is. So if my boss emails me and says, hey, can you work on this project? I don't actually know what that means yet. So my next action might be to email my boss to find out more about the project, or to, connect with my colleagues to brainstorm or meet to discuss the project. So I kind of have to assess what it means to even move forward with that project and deciding what that next action is. Then I capture that next action in Todoist underneath that particular project, and then I categorize it based on context. So if I need to set up a meeting with people, for example, which is often a next action for me with newer projects, then I will indicate that as a next action, and then I'll use either an email context or an internet context to capture that on my next actions list. So that way, the next time I am in engage mode and I'm just, doing my things, I'll come across that particular action of, oh, right, for this particular project, I need to schedule a meeting with Tiffany and Lucy, so that way we can move forward on this project that we're all going to be working on together. Sometimes there are projects that I am pretty much aware of what I need to do. I don't need to check in with another person. Maybe it's a project that I do seasonally or pretty consistently. And so I can either have a checklist that helps me to move through that particular project. Checklists are awesome for recurring projects. If there are things that I do every semester or every year, then having that checklist makes that process so much easier. I don't have to stop and think, okay, what's the thing that we need to do in order to move this process forward? If it's not a recurring project or I don't have a checklist for it, sometimes I'll gauge whether or not I feel like I need to create a checklist of some sort, or project plans to basically write out or mind map what the process is going to be. Most of the time, I don't need to do this for projects. And so I know some people, for every single project they have, they always basically map out the entire project from start to finish. What's the first thing I need to do? Then what, then what, then what, then what? I generally don't do that because I find that most of the time, by the time I get to, step 13, the scope of the project has completely changed from what I originally thought it was, and I wasted my time by doing so much detailed planning up front. So if I do any kind of project planning like that for something bigger, it's usually super loose and very broad and general, and I don't put 50 steps, I might put like 10 steps that I feel pretty confident are going to happen. And then when I get to step like 8 and I realize, oh, okay, things are going kind of how I imagine that they would plan, how I imagine that they would go, then I can go in and add in, what are going to be the next steps or whatnot. But I really plan as far as I need to in order to get that project off of my mind. That's always my kind of my gauge of, have I planned enough for this project? For some projects, that means I need to plan it out, with a mind map and brainstorming. And for some projects, it's literally what's the next action, and that's enough to get it off my mind. So as I'm going about my day-to-day, I've done a video before where I talk about engaging with my next actions lists. I just go through my next actions lists, and inherently by doing the things on my lists, I am working on my projects. That's one of the things I love the most about working from my next actions lists as opposed to working from projects. Is because if I'm working from just projects, I'm very short-sighted in maybe what's the best thing for me to be working on. I'm also context switching a lot, but when I'm working from next actions lists, I can make progress on multiple projects kind of throughout the day, and I feel like I get a lot more done that way. So each week, my goal is to essentially, work on my next actions lists, and as I'm working on my next actions list, as I complete tasks, I might go into a project and say, now that that no longer has a next action, what's the next action that I need to do? I'll add in that next action, and repeat the process, repeat the cycle until the project is complete. In some instances, I might end up getting stalled on a next action because I'm waiting for something from someone. So maybe I have done all of the steps that I need to do, and my next action is to get approval from my supervisor for a final draft of something. So what I wouldn't put on my next actions list is get final approval from such and such person. That's very vague and doesn't really tell me what I need to do. So I would usually put one of two things. I would put, email my boss to, get approval or get, the review or whatnot, or I would put, publish final version. If I put email my supervisor, then that's actually literally a task that I need to do. I need to send an email to get approval from this particular person. But on the back end, I also still want to document my next action. And my next action, once I get this approval, is to publish the final product. So I really try to capture my tasks, not other people's tasks, because that helps me to remember, again, what do I need to do next? Not what am I waiting for? Sometimes that can be helpful, but really for me, it's more important to document what I need to do next. So generally that means that if I am the next thing that I need to do is publish the final project, I will tag that with a waiting for label in Todoist. And then either in the comment section, or sometimes I'll just put it in parentheses right next to the actual task, I'll indicate basically what I've done or like who I'm waiting for. So I emailed Kevin on June 14th. So that way that will remind me when I took action to move that thing forward and who basically has the ball, who I'm kind of waiting for. During my weekly review process, this all kind of comes full circle, and the system keeps churning because I'm able to review my waiting for list to see where any projects might be stalled. I'm able to review my projects list to make sure that I'm moving forward. I've got next actions and everything, and that my projects list is current as well. It also helps me to, if a particular project's on my mind, then I can gauge pretty much every single week, do I need to do additional project planning for this particular project, or do I feel pretty good about where I am? Is it not stressful or not on my mind all the time? So that's pretty much the life cycle of a project. The initial entry is in your inbox in some way, either an email inbox or in a physical inbox or a task manager, digital task manager inbox. You move it through to clarify what it is. You organize it into your task management system, into your GTD system. You add your next actions. You document what you're waiting for. And basically wash, rinse, repeat until the project is completed. For any type of action support items or project support items, depending on what the kind of scope of your project is, you might have a mix of paper files, digital files that you're able to maintain, and that might mean that you need to maintain separate filing systems. You might need a paper filing system for your project support and a digital filing system for your project support. I've talked a lot on this channel about the fact that I'm kind of moving away from paper, and so I do have paper-based project support, but it's very, very, very slim. So slim that I don't even have like a desk file folder for it, because if I ever have paper project support, I just have a single file folder that just literally sits on my desk because it's so infrequent that that is a thing for me. So most of my project support notes, like the things that I need to do that are not next actions, that would be an example of project support or project plans. That stuff lives in Obsidian, and I've talked a bit about how I'm using Obsidian a little bit, but I don't put my next actions into Todoist unless they are actual next actions. So if I've got 14 steps to get a project to completion, I only put the next action, maybe that's the first step, I put that into Todoist, and the other 13 steps live in my project support material in Obsidian. One thing I find super helpful to do is to make sure that my project name in Todoist matches my project name in Obsidian and matches my project name in Outlook if I have a project support folder in Outlook. That way, every time I'm looking for something related to that project, it's always basically in the same place, and it saves me time from having to remember, okay, wait, what did I call it in Obsidian? What did I call it in Outlook? What did I call it in Todoist? If it's the same name in every single one of those areas, it just makes the process a lot faster. So that's how I'm moving through projects, how I move a project from kind of beginning all the way to conclusion. Of course, when a project is completely done, you can either delete it from Todoist or archive it. I archive projects just because I have internalized this habit of basically archiving everything. I probably could stand to delete a lot of stuff, but I just don't for personal reasons. It's just a quirk that I have. And then sometimes during the weekly review, that's when I realize, where am I at with this project? Oh yeah, I'm done. Let me archive this project. So the weekly review is really kind of one part cleanup and one part game plan setting. So I love, love, love the weekly review for that process. If you haven't already seen it, definitely check out my weekly review process. I lead you step by step through that so that way you can start your own weekly review with me as a guide. Let me know if you still have unanswered questions about working with projects or how I'm using projects or moving through projects, and I will either do another video about it or I'll answer your questions in the comments or possibly both. Thanks so much for watching and have a great week.